What is going on, everyone? This is Ninja Geek here. Welcome back to another video, and today we actually have some Nuketown gameplay, and I don't really have that much of it just because I don't really like the gameplay on this map, and Nuketown is always known, for being chaotic and all that. It's, one of the smallest maps in Call of Duty history. Obviously, the number one place for that is Shipment, but I would put Nuketown as the number two smallest map in Call of Duty history, and it's always been somewhat fun to play on. I personally like the original Nuketown as my favorite. Nuketown 2025 had some issues with the snipers and the LMGs and all that stuff. Nuketown 2065 in Black Ops 3, or Nuketown with a 3 as many would call it, that one was okay, but it's futuristic. Not a lot of people like the future stuff, especially with Black Ops 3, and now we're here with Black Ops 4, and we have this version of Nuketown, which it looks amazing. I don't really have any complaints about that. The setting is awesome, but the gameplay, it's just not good. Basically, I know that, Black Ops 4 is not supposed to be Black Ops 1 or Black Ops 2 or, anything that we've known from the past, because obviously they have to change, they have to innovate, and, so on and so forth. I understand that, and that's pretty much what Black Ops 4 Nuketown feels like. It doesn't feel like the older Nuketowns that I knew from the past at all. It just kind of feels like a chaotic, clumpy cluster mess. Basically, what I'm trying to get at here is I'm going to discuss my biggest problem with Black Ops 4 at this time. Now, I know I had made a video in the past talking about one of my biggest problems, which is that the streaks cost way too high, and the whole ComSec device issue with having to run the ComSec device to get score streaks and all of that. And now, since they've actually updated it where, or at least, recently updated it so that it's only 10 points per score streak kill instead of plus 25 like it always usually is, it's just kind of weird what Treyarch is doing with the score streaks and trying to dilute them and instead bring out these specialists, and that's pretty much where I'm going. The biggest problem that I have with Black Ops 4 is with the specialists, and not only is it with the specialists, but it has to do with what we knew from previous Call of Duty games. So if you take a look at pretty much any Call of Duty game in the past, all of them allowed you to select a grenade, whether that's a lethal or a tactical or even both, or even multiples of both. It's in Black Ops 2, it actually changed so that you can have multiples of both. But in the older Call of Duty games past, before Black Ops 2, you always had a grenade and a couple of stuns or concussions and stuff like that. But in Black Ops 4, we don't see that at all. Now, you can take a frag grenade or a Molotov or a little concussion in place of the equipment that you already have as a specialist, but who would honestly do that when you have, like, Ruin's grappling hook, or the TAC deploy beacon, or the vision pulse dart, whatever you want to call it? There's no way that anyone in this world would take a little frag grenade or a concussion over being able to spot where enemies are on your minimap, or being able to grapple from place to place to get the advantage. Like, there's just no comparison. Now, you might want to do that, but there's really no comparison for most of the specialist characters. With that said, Black Ops 4 just kind of feels lackluster, and most of the time, even especially when I'm playing domination game modes or objective game modes, I'll try and throw a grenade or try and get some kind of advantage or a stun or a concussion over there. But in Black Ops 4, you simply can't do that. It's basically just gun on gun, and a lot of people do like that. There's nothing wrong with gun on gun. In fact, I think that most Call of Duty games should be gun on gun and not worry about frag or concussion grenades. I did think that the concussion and sticky grenade, or whatever you want to call it, in World War II, that was a little bit too much, especially on Shipment, where you would just keep spawning in and it was just grenades everywhere, sort of like, I guess, Call of Duty 4. I don't mean as in like that, but I wish that we did have some sort of frag or concussion. Like, at least if we could carry one of them, that would help. But here's my issue with it. If Treyarch decides, yeah, that's a good idea, let's make them have a frag grenade or a stun that they can pick from, and it would cost a point on your creative class, of course. The problem with that is that if somebody did that, then they would have a specialist weapon, a specialist equipment ability, and a grenade, and I think that that would just be way too much. And even though, like I said, I want some sort of grenade or some sort of form of being unrestricted from the create a class that we have now, I think that that would ultimately be a bad idea. So I do have a better decision. Now, there are two ways you can look at this, but I don't really think that the choice number one is the correct way to go. But I'm going to list it out and see what you basically think. So choice number one, what they can do is leave Black Ops 4 as it is, and then make a separate playlist where it's like just a bunch of game modes or whatnot, but the specialists are completely disabled, and you can have the ability of having a frag or a stun or even both or something like that. So it's more like classic Call of Duty. That way, people that like the specialists and all that crazy stuff can have their own game mode, but people that would prefer not to have all of the crazy stuff, they could just go into their own game mode. Now, obviously, the problems with that are that you're pretty much splitting the fan base in half, and you're kind of like cutting it, and I don't think, obviously, Treyarch wouldn't do that. It's really not likely, and I wouldn't even like to see it like that, because then people are playing different versions of the game, and it's just kind of awkward. So what I would like to see happen is a merge together, a compromise, if you will, where basically you should only be able to do exactly like it was in Black Ops 3. And if you remember in Black Ops 3, there was the specialist weapon or the specialist ability, but you had to pick between one. Now, Black Ops 3 was a little bit different in the fact that you got to pick which specialist you want, and there was no limit on it, so you could play as whoever you want, whereas in Black Ops 4, you only get to pick it at the beginning of the match, so it's kind of limited in terms of who you can pick. But I feel like this same system should go into Black Ops 4. So what do I mean by that? Well, I don't think that it's really fair for Ruin, let's say, to have the grab slam and the grapple hook. That's a little too much, in my opinion. And if you take another example, Seraph with the Annihilator and the attack deploy beacon. Why should she have the weapon and be able to spawn in and her teammates as well, spawn in wherever they feel like it? That's just kind of too crazy, in my opinion. Or you even take Recon, who is my favorite specialist. Why should you have the ability to have vision pulse to see through walls and have them on the radar as well, even at the same time or at separate times? I think that that's just a little too much. And so what I mean by this is I think that they should implement the Black Ops 3 system back or forward, I guess, into Black Ops 4, where you only get to pick one or the other. Now, I don't know how they would do this. Is it going to be a pre-selection before the game starts, like in the lobby? Like you can choose, hey, I want to play with a specialist weapon or a specialist ability, like have a toggle like that. Or if it's going to be while the match is loading in, when you're picking your specialist, you can pick the weapon or the ability. I'm not too sure how they would implement. I think the second way would be the best way. But ultimately, I think that that would make the game play much better, because now it's really much of a choice as to which one you'd want. And yeah, in terms of if you look at Crash, let's say, Crash has the health boost, so you could either pick the health boost or the ammo pack, and obviously I think most people are going to pick the health boost over the ammo pack, but they could easily buff up the ammo pack and, tweak them as you go along, so that the abilities kind of match each other with the weapons, and vice versa. But ultimately, I think that picking between one or the other would make the abilities feel a lot better and more rare versus the way it is in Black Ops 4 now, where everything is pretty much spammed. Like you find attack deploy beacon, and Ruin has a grapple hook, grab slam, Recon you see darts flying across and vision pulls going off, and I think that all of the specialists, like all of these abilities together, are just way too much, especially combined now when you put it on a small map like Nuketown. I think it just completely breaks the game, breaks the map in general, and it breaks the flow of the gameplay. Now, obviously Call of Duty's not going to go back to the way, well, I guess I should say Black Ops 4 with Treyarch isn't going to go back to the way that it used to be, with no specialists and just having kill streaks and lethals and tacticals. But I personally would like to see specialists removed, in my own opinion, because I don't think that people should get free stuff. And in Black Ops 3, it didn't entirely bother me all that much, just because it was more like settled back, and obviously it was more of a futuristic game. But I don't think that I think that the flow in Black Ops 3 was perfect for the game that it was, and the specialists kind of went along with that, and you could tell they put a lot of time. But in Black Ops 4, I don't think the specialists flow together at all. I don't think they flow well together at all, and I think that they're just way too much, and they give people too much to the fact that kill streaks don't really matter anymore, no matter how powerful they are. Like, the gunship can get feeds on Nuketown and so on and so forth on open maps, and the sniper's nest is really good. Attack helicopter's pretty good. You know, all these kill streaks, I mean, they're pretty good. Obviously, they cost a little bit too much, in my opinion, but they're pretty good when you do get them. But the problem is that why have that when I can just pretty much have any ability like Nomad's dog, and he could go on a rampage, and it's pretty much just like Riley from Call of Duty Ghosts, which was a kill streak. It's like you're giving away free rewards that are sometimes the same, if not better, than the actual kill streaks that are in the game. So it's like it really doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So I feel like, anyways, if they did do this change and they made it so you could only pick the weapon or the ability, or, how would you say it, the first ability or the second one, primary and secondary abilities, because, crashes isn't really a weapon, it's more of like a primary, ability. But if they did it like that, where you only get to pick between one or the other, that would be great. Now, here's the second part of what I have to say. Along with that, I feel like they should only limit you between one ability or the other, but at the same time, then open up the second ability spot for a spot on your created class where you can pick a frag or a concussion. Now, I don't know, I would say to compromise it, only pick one or the other, just like the ability, so you can either have a frag or a concussion, but and it would cost an extra slot on your created class to do it that way. But I feel like, number one, having the extra spot open would give more room for a created class if you didn't want a grenade or a stun grenade or any kind of lethals or tacticals. But if you did want a stun grenade or a frag or a semtex or whatever, then you have the ability to have it, and it takes up a spot on your created class, and that way it kind of compromises both. So let's say, for example, I'll throw out a few examples. I want to play as Seraph with the Annihilator, so I choose the Annihilator over the Tac Deploy Beacon, so that's gone. So I just have the Annihilator. Now I want to use an extra point on my created class to have a frag grenade, so that when I play Domination, I can have a little bit more comfort in trying to take the objectives. So that would work as one example. Or if you look at it at another example, I could either take the Tac Deploy Beacon. Let's say I take that first over the Annihilator, and I want to have the Tac Deploy Beacon, but instead of having a frag or a stun or anything like that, I just use that extra point to put something else on the class or whatnot. You know what I mean? So that way that person can utilize the class a little bit better, and they wouldn't have the frag or the semtex or whatever to take an objective, but they would have something that they would like. And I think that system would work a lot better than what it is right now, because basically what it's doing is it's just giving out free stuff to people, and even if they don't do well, they're always going to have it. But it just kind of lacks, it's kind of restricting, and when I go to take objectives, it really affects objective game modes, in my opinion. It's really hard to take the objectives if your teammates aren't good at the gun skill, because you just have to rely on yourself being good, rather than just having things at your disposal to kind of use like they were in the older Call of Duty games. But now, with these specialists, and having it being set to allow to have two of them at the same time, I think that it just kind of allows for too much. And, on bigger maps, it's not a huge deal because you can kind of get around it. For example, like Jungle or something like that, where it's a bigger, more open map, whatever. It's not a huge deal. It still is a deal, but it's not a huge deal. But if you're talking about like Nuketown, for example, it's really too chaotic. And especially with the way that the spawns work in this entire game as a whole, I think that this system needs to be implemented in some way into Black Ops 4, but ultimately that decision obviously is up to Treyarch, and they really only listen to the competitive community for the most part, because Black Ops 4, whether you like it or not, is based on a competitive type of game. It was really built for that, because as you can see, the manual health and the way that things are more tactical and lined up, and you have to be more strategic in even picking heroes or characters for your team, your specialists. The way that it's set up is more competitive, and you could tell that Treyarch was trying to make this game for the competitive, less than 1% of the community, which is really not acceptable in my opinion, but it is what happened, and we have to live with that. So I don't know if Treyarch will make a change. They probably won't, just because they're not going to listen to me. But if you think that this idea is a great one, you can let them know and tweet it at them or send it to them somehow. Or you can let me know how you would change my opinion or make your own opinion in the comments section below. But that's it for this video. If you did like it, you know what to do. I'll see you on the next one. This is Ninja Geek. I'm out. And peace.